well as in the entire country at the time it was introduced in 2005 was, there are abundant laws, umpteen number of laws in favor of women. And why this Domestic Violence Act? That was the brooding questions in the mind of all of them. Yes, there was umpteen number of laws in favor of women. But for what purpose? That is the main question. First of all, we don't recognize there could be violence inside the home. How the women were treated, that is also another question. Swami Vivekananda used to say, the best thermometer to the progress of the nation is its treatment of women. The best thermometer to the progress of the nation is its treatment of women. How women were treated. How women were treated, especially inside the home. Home, as we understand, is a place to give you support, home, happiness, development, etc., etc. But in many of the families, it was not so. At the time when the law was enacted, that is Protection of Women on Domestic Violence Act was enacted, the position was this. Either the justice will come to the women either after she committing suicide or after she suffered bride burning. That is, cases where for abatement to commit suicide under section 306 or dowry death under 304B. That was the condition. What is justice after the death of the women for the women folk? Absolutely, there was no justice. Even while she is alive, the only remedy that was open to her is to prefer a complaint under any of the sections of IPC and thus bringing the opposite side, that is the husband, to the police station. Once the husband is taken to police station, it is end of the marital bond. That is end of it. During the time when I was the judge of the Mahila court and when in the family court, whenever in cases under section 498A, when the women plead for reunion, the main answer by the husband is, why I was taken to police station where I was disrespected. Therefore, I will not give my consent for reunion. Police station is considered to be a place for disrespect, not a place for respect. Once a criminal complaint is given, that was an end of the matter. Therefore, the legislature thought of giving a civil remedy, an instant remedy, an immediate remedy. Then what is justice after all? Justice is fairness. Justice is what is due to you. What is due, what is required for a woman who is suffering violence inside the home? The legislature has thought out extensively and has brought out a very pragmatic legislation that we call it as Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. It has very laudable object behind it. It may appear that so many rights have been given to the women under that. But in my opinion, this beautiful legislation has got a futuristic purpose behind it. We know that our children are with us. The children learn by imitation. Whatever we do, the child simply imitate. By imbibing, they are learning. By watching, by looking, by screening us, the child is learning every minute. If the house is going to be a violent house, if it is a place where women suffer due on account of violence, the children also learns it. The children in future, it may become a terrorist, we do not know. The children understands that violence is justifiable. Therefore, it is happening inside the family. If we are going to have future leaders, when they feel that violence is justified, where are we going to stand? And that is the preservation of the family, creation of a value-based generation are intended by enacting this act. Then we will go to the PowerPoint now. Will you please switch on this screen sharing, sir?
Yes, ma'am, it is enabled, ma'am, now. I enabled for all the participants. So, Lordship may share the screen. Yes, ma'am. It's being shown. You're able to see the screen called aggrieved person.
Just I'm opening, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I will make a request to all of them. The PowerPoint has been prepared, keeping in mind only those last students and very young beginners. Therefore, I request all the senior members should not mistake me, because I thought this is an act which contains very, very novel provisions, very new provisions, and which we could not have imagined at all. That is a kind of responsibility placed upon the judiciary, and very youngsters, very young lawyers have taken the position of judges in recent times. Therefore, this PowerPoint presentation is keeping in view only the youngsters. Therefore, please, the seniors may please forgive me. Why domestic violence? How domestic violence? These two are exhibited in this slide. Is it visible to all of them, sir?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
The problem is, whenever there is a violence, we don't try to speak out. We simply want to close it down. We want to simply suffer. We want to be in silence, not opening out. Up to a certain limit, it may be all right, but not at all times. There is no use of the parents crying after losing the daughter in the marital life. Only that is what is intended. The Domestic Violence Act was enacted to provide more effective protection to the rights of women, which are guaranteed under the Constitution. The Constitution provides for equality. Where is equality in the real life? Men and women are equal only on paper. So far as our society is concerned, it is highly patriarchal. There is no gender justice inside the family. It is because there is unequal power relationship between both the gender. The household work done by the women remains economically insignificant. Many women do not have economic freedom, and even if they are having economic freedom, are not having economic justice. The household work, when it is not significant, not recognized as significant, then the problem of sharing the property also arises. That is the main problem, and the equality and is not followed, then the problem comes. Article 15(2) provides that the parliament can enact a special law, and that is how this law has been brought into existence. See, how do we consider wife? This is a joke, but it has a lot of implications in that. In the United States, the book titled How to Change Your Wife in 30 Days sold 15 million copies in 1 week before the author discovered that the title had a spelling error. The correct title was How to Change Your Life in 30 Days. After correction for the whole month, only 2 copies sold. This is how the life is. Maybe after hearing this presentation, if at least a few of them could change their attitude towards the family, attitude towards the women folk, attitude towards the wife, I think justice will be done, and the host can be very proud of that.
Yes, please. I hope.
Then we have said access to justice under this act. Whenever there is an enactment, the act itself is towards providing access to justice. Recently, we heard law is a tool and justice is the end by our Honorable Chief Justice. And access to justice, a very attractive proposition by Justice Brennan of the US Supreme Court, where he says, nothing rankles more in human heart than a sense of injustice. We have heard injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. When it is a threat to justice everywhere, we can't keep quiet when somebody is suffering on account of domestic violence. If democracy is to survive, the machinery of justice should be affordable to women. It must be accessible, affordable. And that is how the Act has brought out many provisions which really brings access to justice. But I would also be pointing out how this benevolent provision, how this social welfare legislation with a lot of futuristic hope is not effectively implemented. That will be part of this presentation. Access to justice is the basic principle to rule of law. Delivery of justice should be impartial and it should not be discriminatory. It is recognized as prominent fundamental right. It's also a fundamental duty that we should not adopt any practices which is derogatory to the dignity of women. That is what is our fundamental duty also. Then we will, in the course of the presentation, we will see how access to justice is made so simple, so easy, and so accessible to the women community. This is the order by the Supreme Court, and the details I will present it in the next slide. Originally, a case was filed by the wife before the Saidapet 17th Court for maintenance. It happened to be dismissed after 10 months on the ground that the court has no jurisdiction. Thereafter, wife prefers an appeal before the principal judge at Chennai, and it was allowed. Then the husband files a CRP before the High Court, and CRP by the husband is dismissed. Husband once again takes the case before the Supreme Court in SLP. SLP came to be dismissed on 10/8/2015. See, the problem starts in 2011 till 2018, 10/8/2015, nearly 5 years. Jurisdiction where the women should go is not yet decided. The Supreme Court order says party is at liberty to file the documents before the court for showing the jurisdiction. That is what is the Supreme Court order says. But the question is, when the woman comes for a case of maintenance, saying that I have no food to eat for the next day, and after 5 years when we keep the case pending, where is justice? What is the use of having this kind of beautiful social welfare legislations? What should have been done? It should have been returned saying that it must be presented before the proper court. Next day she would have gone to the proper court. Why this case for all the 5 years? Why there should be a case? Why different forums? How to go to the Supreme Court to Delhi? What is the flight charge? How the women will go? How the lawyer will go? With the unmindful of the provisions. Either it should have been sent to the Chief Judicial Magistrate asking him to return it to the proper court, or it should have been returned straight away to the party, or the court itself would have sent it with an intimation to CJM. Nothing has been done. Whether the court has got jurisdiction or not has taken all the 5 years without being admitted. That is how we are functioning. We are also part of it. Then there is another case. These are all the informations I have collected from our friends. There is a maintenance order not executed from 1996. The first order is passed on 24/4/1996, directing the husband to pay 300 to the wife and 150 to the child. It is a matter of 450 rupees. If you consider today, with 300 rupees, you can go to a coffee day at Chennai, you can have a cup of coffee, only that much is ordered. As against the respondent husband is a person working in PWD. Till date, The affidavit, it is exactly the copy of the affidavit that is being filed by the party. As on now, distress warrant is pending, non-bailable warrant is pending, but not an 1 rupee has been realized so far from him. Then what is the use of having this justice delivery system? Who is helping this husband? Why the employer is keeping quiet? Under this provision of Domestic Violence Act, the magistrate can directly send a notice to the employer or the debtor, asking them to pay the amount not to the husband, but to the wife directly, who is getting an order of maintenance. That is where access to justice stands in the case of Domestic Violence Act. I will be sharing this PowerPoint after the presentation. Each one of you kindly go through each and every line in the affidavit. When it is in the year 1996, the act came into force in the year 2005. Still, when the amount of maintenance is not paid, does it not amount to economic violence? The magistrate is duty bound to take cognizance of this situation of non-payment, and this should have been treated as economic violence, and the proceedings should have been initiated against this husband under the DV Act also. If the order under the Domestic Violence Act is not obeyed, then only it becomes a punishable offense under Section 31. The husband will be liable to imprisonment for a period of time provided under this act. A person who has to be inside, a person who is earning in a government job is not paying the amount. We are party to, we are witnesses to this kind of happenings. Sir, this is a video that will be self-explanatory, and it will show how the life was and how the life should have been for any woman, whomsoever it is. Let us watch this video.
Yes, ma'am.
Look. I think this, the whole slide video will be powerful enough to show that how life could be happy, how women should be treated, and how the youngsters should behave with the elders. There are too many things that is visible in this video. Together, we should end violence against women. That is a message that is given. And before we go to this provisions of the Act, I would like to share with you a case which I decided while I was a judge of the Mahila Court. It was a case of a simple family, husband and wife with a girl child. The child was aged 13 years. On one night, the wife was away from the family. The girl was subjected to sexual abuse by the father. On the next day morning, the father went for a job. Daughter was profusely bleeding, profusely crying. She was not able to understand what has happened to her, what we should do, what she should do. Unable to bear the pain, she poured kerosene over herself and set her ablaze. The neighbors in and around happened to hear the cry and they came and admitted her in the hospital. She succumbed to the injuries and the child died in the hospital. Before the death, the mother was sent for. Mother also came to the hospital, spoke to the daughter, and she also was very much aware of what has happened to her daughter. Subsequently, the husband was arrested and the prosecution was initiated against the husband. And as expected, the mother turned hostile. Mother said, I do not know what has happened to my daughter and I do not know who did this to my daughter. Ultimately, everybody expected that the case should end in acquittal. That is what was expected. Doctor was summoned and I asked the doctor only two questions. Are you not expected to record the dying declaration and are you not empowered to record the dying declaration? The doctor immediately said, yes, ma'am, I have recorded. But the records were not part of the court record. Immediately, we sent for the medical superintendent of Rayapeta Hospital and he brought the documents. There were only 4 questions in the dying declaration. What is your name? In which class you are in? She said, I am in 5th standard. And what happened to you? My father raped me. Tamilla enna ezhudindana en appa ennai keduttaru. Next question. What made you to burn yourself? He says, I am unable to bear the pain. I am unable to say anything more. This is the 4 question that is verbatim recorded in the own language of the child. Based on the dying declaration, the case ended in conviction. But the question is not the conviction or acquittal. My question is this. When the mother turned hostile in this case, what is the reason behind it? Is the mother not concerned with the daughter? Is not mother aggrieved over the fact that her own husband did this to the daughter? Is not she an aggrieved woman? Will not her heart will be burning? Will she be comfortable to come and say that she do not know what happened to the child? All because the women had no economic independence. Women had no courage to speak out against the husband. There ought to have been peer pressure from relatives not to speak against the husband. There are too many reasons. There is no research at all in our country regarding when a case ends in acquittal, what is the reason? What went wrong? When it went wrong? Why it went wrong? There is no price for the life of the people who are dying. But for the doctor recording the dying declaration, what would have happened? What is the message we are sending out when we give an acquittal to this person when he has committed a very heinous crime? What the age group, what is the women of that age group will think of when a daughter is raped and burned to death? If there is no justice from the court, what is the message we are giving out? The problem is many of the women, at least in rural area, believe that violence is not to be disclosed. Violence has to be in their mind only and not even to their mouth. They don't speak out. Unless they speak out, how do we know what is happening inside? Only now this law recognizes all kind of violence that is happening inside the home. For a moment, I don't say that for each and everything we should fight it out and come to the street and come to the court. Not that. Wherever there is a difference of opinion, yes, negotiation is there. We should have exchange of thoughts, and problems should be discussed and problems should be sorted out, and we should have a family, happy, peaceful family life, no doubt about it. But when it crosses certain limit and when it crosses and reaches the level of violence, should the family is expected to keep quiet, keep silent? That is an issue that we have to discuss. We have to discuss with some of the very important definitions, but for the definition is so important in this case that, but for the definition, we will not be able to understand the scope and objective of the act at all. Therefore, let us start with the definition of aggrieved person. Because under the act, it is only the aggrieved person who can come to the court. Aggrieved person means any woman who has been in a domestic relationship with a respondent and also alleges to have been subjected to domestic violence by the respondent. Any woman who is or who has been in a domestic relationship. They are these three phrases: aggrieved person, domestic relationship, in a shared household, and domestic violence respondent. These are all the 5 key phrases that is very, very important. It is not necessary that the aggrieved person should personally go to the court to file a complaint or a petition seeking remedy under Section 12. All of you must be knowing that Section 12 confers 5 kinds of protection to the women. Custody orders, we will be discussing in detail in the subsequent slides. Protection order, custody order, compensation order, residence order. There are too many orders that could be obtained under Section 12. It is not necessary that the aggrieved woman should go and file it. On behalf of her, somebody else can also go to the court and file it. Very logic and very sensible provision. Then the question of equality for the husbands to ask whether the husband can initiate complaint of domestic violence against the wife. It is no. Husband cannot initiate proceedings against the wife under this enactment, maybe under some other enactment. Then what is domestic relationship? Whenever we speak of domestic violence, we consider only domestic violence between intimate partners, namely husband and wife, and we forget rest of the members inside the family. When we speak of domestic violence, it means family violence and not only the interpersonal relationship between the husband and wife. There are 3 kinds of relationship that is recognized under the Act, that is relationship by way of marriage, then blood relationships, then relationship through adoption, and relationship in the nature of marriage. These 3 categories also are covered under the term domestic relationship. When we talk of relationship in the nature of marriage, whether all the relationship in the nature of marriage gets protection under the Act or there are certain conditions. The Honorable Supreme Court very meaningfully has interpreted the term aggrieved person, giving only a limited scope for the phrase in women in living in relationship. The conditions are very, very important. Both the parties must have been living as husband and wife, and they ought to have been recognized as husband and wife in front of the society. They must be of a valid legal age of marriage, and they should qualify to enter into the marriage. Next one I have highlighted in red color. None of the partners should have a spouse living at the time of entering into relationship. I have highlighted in red color because There are cases where the women in living in relationship, knowing fully well that the male partner is already married, having a wife and child, they go and live with him and then they claim protection under this act. There are some cases where the women get married already, having a husband living and not taking up a divorce. And while the first marriage is alive, they go and live with somebody else and they claim that they are partner in a living in relationship and therefore they are entitled to protection. These two categories are completely ruled out on account of this condition. None of the partners should have a spouse living at the time of entering into relationship. Therefore, those categories cannot expect any protection here. They must have voluntarily cohabited for a significant period. And they must have lived together in the shared household. These are all the conditions under which they will be entire person in living in relationship will be entitled to. The next slide says what is not a relationship in the marriage. The circumstances under which the relationship will not be considered as in the nature of marriage or cannot be considered as in the nature of marriage. Here is a case where the woman entered into relationship knowing fully felt that the respondent was already a married person, and thus she encouraged bigamous relationship. The Supreme Court says the woman committed an intentional thought, that is interference in the marital relationship, with intentionally alienating the respondent from his family. See the language, alienating the respondent from his family, that is his wife and children. If the case set up by the appellant woman is accepted, we have to conclude that there has been an attempt on the part of the appellant to alienate the respondent from his family, resulting in loss of marital relationship, companionship, assistance, loss of consortium, etc. So far as legally wedded wife and children of the respondent are concerned, the law, see the interpretation takes care of the person who are in lawful relationship. Such relationship is not relationship in the nature of marriage. This is a very important judgment. Then the next phrase to be considered is shared household. When the household is considered to be shared, this is a definition, and we'll just have a glance of it because already would be familiar with it. Those who are not familiar those who have forgotten the provisions can refresh themselves. A household where the person aggrieved person, a household where the person aggrieved lives or at any stage has lived in a domestic relationship. Past living also, any stage has lived in a domestic relationship, either singly or along with the respondent, and includes such a household whether owned or tenanted either jointly by the aggrieved person and the respondent, or owned or tenanted by either of them in respect of which either the aggrieved person or the respondent, or both jointly and singly have any right, title or interest, etc., then it is a regular provision. The scope of the provisions providing for shared household is considered to be giving a wider protection than Section 125, because when they award maintenance under Section 125, it is hardly enough to pay the rent. It is hardly enough only to fill up the empty stomach. That is also difficult several times. Therefore, the provision giving for protection under the shared household is considered to be a very important right that is recognized under Section 17. Notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time being in force, every woman in a domestic relationship, you please just remember domestic relationship, domestic violence in a shared household. They shall have the right to reside in the household, whether or not she has any right, title or beneficial interest in the same. The aggrieved person shall not be evicted or excluded from the shared household or any part of it, save in accordance with the procedure established by law. Then who is the respondent? The constitutional validity of the phrase respondent definition was under challenged before the Supreme Court, and this was the original definition. Respondent means any adult male person. What is ordered to be deleted is now adult male, 2 words. Adult is ordered to be deleted, and the proviso here, which I have given it in full capital letter, is also ordered to be deleted. A respondent means any adult person who is or who has been in a domestic relationship with the aggrieved person and against whom the aggrieved person has sought any relief under this act, provided that an aggrieved wife or female living in a relationship in the nature of marriage, wife or a partner who is in living in relationship may also file a complaint against relative of the husband or the male partner. This relative of the husband was interpreted saying that relative includes female relatives also. That had been the interpretation prior to the constitutional validity was under challenge. Now the proviso is also ordered to be deleted. This is the case, that is 2016 SEC Online Supreme Court 1118, Hira versus Harshora and others. And under this, as I pointed out already, the word adult male stands deleted, and the proviso to 2Q also stands deleted. There are anomalous situations because of this deletion, and lot of litigations are expected to come after this. And we have to wait and see what kind of litigations are going to come after this interpretation. Then the question of domestic violence. I only want to point out not necessarily commission, but also omission. Under the Indian Penal Code also, we have this provision. Offense includes omission also, but this is specifically here also any act, omission or commission or the conduct of the respondent. Then it covers the physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and economic abuse. All the abuses are covered. The question of verbal abuse was very much criticized, saying it is easy to bring a false case before the court because the law recognizes verbal violence. So at times we take it so easy, verbal violence, but words may break or words may make. We do not know how many houses persons living in make use of the words which will build the relationship. Many times words are used which will not build bridges, it will build only walls. If it is walls, otherwise, to that extent it is all right, but there are words which will break your heart, and thus lot of cases of suicide inside the home. Maybe it is by either partner, I am not on that. But verbal violence is sometimes so difficult to digest and so difficult to manage, and therefore the law rightly recognizes verbal violence also. Then it is a case of harassment and threatening. Threatening sometimes causes innumerable problems, and therefore the law has recognized that also in the definition. We will discuss in detail about these kind of abuses when we talk about the orders that are going to be passed by the court. These are all the definition classes under for the physical abuse. I only want to point out the physical abuse is defined as any conduct which is of such a nature as to cause bodily pain, harm or danger to life, limb, health, etc. And remaining sexual abuse, verbal abuses are defined as inclusive definition is there. Includes, whenever a complaint is filed, just our mind is tempted to think whether it is covered under the definition. But the definition is includes. That means whatever is described there is not exhaustive. If something else has happened, the legislature cannot contemplate what kind of abuses will be there inside the family. Therefore, very rightly, inclusive definition has been given. Therefore, whenever complaint is coming, we should be trying to find out whether it will be covered under the inclusive definition also. These are all physical abuse kind of abuses that once again, it is only illustrative and not exhaustive. Sexual abuse, forced sexual intercourse. It forces women to look at pornography or any other obscene picture or material. Any act of sexual nature so as to abuse, humiliate or degrade women, which is otherwise violative of her dignity, or any unwelcome conduct of sexual nature, then child sexual abuse. Once again, it is also inclusive. Verbal and emotional abuse, you know very well, that is what is happening in everyday life. The only thing I want to point out is abusing women for not having a child. That is happening in every family without even wanting to know who is responsible for it, what are the causes behind it. And invariably, women is accused of for not having a child, and there is a related verbal and emotional abuse is there. Then economic abuse is very, very important. This is the basic reason for remaining abuses. Therefore, we will just see what is the kind of economic abuse. Not providing her money for maintaining herself or her children, number one. Number two, not providing food, shelter, medicine, etc. Number three, stopping or disturbing her from carrying on her employment, not allowing her to take up an employment, taking away her salary, income, wages, etc. Forcing woman out of the house he lives in, stopping her from using or accessing any part of the house, not allowing use of cloth or article, etc., not paying rent if staying in a rented accommodation. These are all coming under economic abuse. Economic abuse has brought in a lot of litigations, has taken away a lot of life, and therefore economic violence is one thing whether everybody should take care of. Relief available, as I told you already, these are all the relief available. Protection orders, residence order, monetary relief, compensation order, custody order, etc. The only thing is, the law says the provisions of Code of Criminal Procedure will apply. That is one thing. But the second thing is, these orders are filed by way of application by the aggrieved woman under Section 12. The law also says it is open to the court to devise its own procedure for the purpose of deciding the application under Section 12 and 18 to 21. Therefore, the very nature of the order that is sought for under Section 18 to 21 are predominantly civil in nature. Therefore, it is open to the court to adopt the Code of Civil Procedure. Though it says that the court to adopt its own procedure. Its own procedure, the second procedure is leaving CRPC, it is only CPC. And if the court wants to have the alternate dispute resolution methods, there are also provisions for that. And therefore, that should be taken care of. Interim and ex parte orders, there are very, very serious issues on that. While I have been discussing with some of the district judiciary and the lawyers, what they say is the court is not passing any ex parte or interim orders. Court is reluctant. I do not know why they should be reluctant. And I was asking, can they point out any reason? They say that they are expecting domestic incidents report from the protection officer or service provider. And unless domestic incident is received, they are not willing to pass any ex parte or interim order. I was really just wondering, how do they expect domestic incident report if the women straight away come to the court? The law provides for parallel remedy. The very, very important rights and remedies are given under this act. Supposing a woman suffers from an act of domestic violence, either she can go to the protection officer, or she can go to the service provider, or she can go to the police station, or she can straight away go to the magistrate. All the remedies are parallel. Supposing if the woman chooses to come to the court cannot expect a domestic incident report. It is not mandatory for the court to wait for domestic incident report. If the court is going to wait for domestic incident report, everything is lost. Imagine a case where in a midnight there is a domestic violence and the woman comes out of the house and asks for residence order tomorrow, the very next day. If the interim domestic order, domestic protection, or to remain inside the house is not given, where she will go? The main problem for women, especially for the wife, is where to go if a parent's order, which we will see in detail. And if the brother in the parental home is not married, yes, she can go to the parent's house. If the brother is married and brother's wife is there, not necessary to say that she can't go and take shelter there. And if the residence order is not given immediately, and if the court is going to wait for domestic incident report, then end of everything. There is no use of having this kind of benevolent provisions. If they are going to grant interim and ex parte orders, a law provides for only 3 days notice. And if the husband is not turning up, or if the husband comes and says some other position, it is always open to them to modify the order. What is the great difficulty in that? After all, the orders that are going to be passed is only civil in nature. It is not going to take away the liberty of the other side. It is only a protective order. Preservation of the family peace, preservation of the society, preservation of the wife. And what is the difficulty in that in passing ex parte orders? Invariably, there are complaints that interim ex parte orders are not granted by the trial court. I do not know whether it is correct or not. If it is correct, I would request all the judicial magistrates that they should be willing and not, I will go one step further. Not that the women should go and ask for it. If an application under Section 12 seeking protection order is asked for, it is for the court to go through the remaining provisions and find out what else is necessary for them. தமிழ்ல சொல்லணும்னா கேளுங்கள் தரப்படும் தட்டுங்கள் திறக்கப்படும் அப்படின்னு சொல்ற சட்டம் கூட இல்லை. இது பால் நினைந்தூட்டும் தாய் போல அப்படின்னு குழந்தைக்கு என்ன தேவைன்னு புரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டு கொடுக்கிற மாதிரி நீதித்துறை நடுவர்கள் செயல்பட வேண்டும். This is the kind of approach that is needed of this judicial magistrates. Any training program, because maybe I was a director of Judicial Academy, I have developed that tendency or not, I do not know. But any program on this like this should give you necessary skills, knowledge, attitude. Ask, சொல்லுவாங்க அப்படிதான் சொல்லுவாங்க. A means attitude, S means skill, K for knowledge. Any program should give you this. You ask for, we will give it. This is the benefit of this kind of program. Only to bring in attitudinal changes. I used to have a lot of videos and this kind of PowerPoint presentation. Unless we look into the problem, unless we put ourselves into the shoes, unless we have empathy, we will not be able to understand the problem of the persons. That is the better function. Let us see. Protection order. Stop. It is called in popular parlance, it is called as stop violence order. Preventing the perpetrator from entering the women's place of employment and causing harassment. The law is very, very logic, and law is very, very pragmatic. This stop violence order is very, very practical. Whenever a woman faces problem at home, the other side starts giving problem in the place of employment, or in the school where the children are studying, or in the parental home where the woman is helped by the parents, or in the relative's house, or in the friend's house, wherever she is taking shelter, wherever she is getting some kind of assistance, they will go there and create problem there. Therefore, this kind of stop violence orders. See how practically it is designed. Preventing the perpetrator from entering into women's place of employment and causing harassment, preventing any communication with the women from the perpetrator, preventing any violence being caused to a person related to the women, preventing any financial action from being taken by the perpetrator to the women's detriment. Then this residence order. We have been discussing about shared household and the right of residence. The provisions under right of residence is very, very grave provisions, and we will discuss it in some detail in the remaining slides. This is only repetitive. These are all the rights of the women to have this kind of orders, and we will see the nature of orders that could be passed by the court, that one. I do not want to repeat it. Who are all the implementing authorities under this act? It is first one is protection officer. I would say protection officer's role is maybe more or less like that of a god for this aggrieved women. On behalf of this aggrieved women, protection officer can go to the court and file the complaint, or she can, if the woman wants a shelter home, he is expected to provide medical facility, yes, counseling, yes, everything, whatever the aggrieved woman wants, it is for the protection officer to provide. The protection officer is expected to assist the court in arriving at the correct conclusion. And the protection officer is the person who is in charge of executing the orders that is passed in favor of this aggrieved woman. The protection officer has so much of a role and responsibility. She is more than the aggrieved woman, he is expected to function. That is the kind of role and responsibility. Role and responsibility is very stunning when we see Section 5, where duties have been assigned in favor of police officers, service providers. We can understand that. But the duty is assigned to the magistrate also. See the kind of role that is assigned to the magistrate. A police officer, protection officer, service provider, or the magistrate who has received a complaint of this is very, very important. Who has received a complaint, number one, is otherwise present in the place of incidents of domestic this is happening, or a complaint that is happening, I want a relief, or they are these mute spectators to this incident, they can't remind me. And they shall inform the aggrieved person. They shall, the magistrate shall inform to so many orders of civil liability of services of protection of form when they are coming and approaching them. When there is a shelter home, and if the aggrieved woman requests that she must be given shelter, the shelter home is to provide shelter. While hearing the petitions under Section 12, if the magistrate feels that counseling is essential, yes, counseling must be arranged. For the purpose of counseling, the magistrate can take the assistance of welfare expert also. After taking the assistance of all these persons, what is the kind of order the court is expected to pass, and whether it is after hearing, and when, whether really a domestic incident should have been taken place to pass orders, or the magistrate is expected to pass orders when there is an allegation, there is likelihood of domestic violence happening. This provision you cannot imagine. If the woman says that there is likelihood of domestic violence taking place, the law takes care of the preventive aspect, prevention of domestic violence, not necessarily protection of women. Prevention of domestic violence is also contemplated. It is an excellent provision where it says the magistrate may, after giving the aggrieved person and the respondent an opportunity of being heard on being prima facie satisfied that domestic violence has taken place or is likely to take place, pass a protection order prohibiting the respondent from committing any act of domestic violence. Aiding or abetting should not be done. Entering into place of employment of the woman shall not be done. Entering into school shall not be done. Attempting to communicate with the women, giving obscene messages, no. Alienation of any asset or operation of bank account, no. Immediately a domestic violence complaint comes, bank accounts are closed, assets are alienated, such kind of mistake cannot be done, should not be done. This is the nature of order that could be passed. causing violence to the dependent on other relatives. See the last one, committing any other act as specified in the protection order apart from A to F. If the court feels that any other order is necessary, without even the victim asking for, without even the aggrieved woman asking for, the court is entitled to, court is supposed to, court is duty bound to provide such kind of orders apart from what is being asked for. This residence order, see the residence order. While disposing of an application under subsection 1 of section 12, the magistrate may, on being satisfied that the domestic violence, the only thing the court is expected to see is whether there had been a domestic violence or whether there is a likelihood of domestic violence. If these two, either of these things is satisfied, then the court is expected to pass orders. This is not, it is not necessary that a separate application under section 18, 19, 20, 21 or 22 should be filed. The law says, while disposing of an application under subsection 1 of section 12, section 12 is stop violence orders or protection orders. While passing orders under the section 12 in the application seeking stop violence orders, the court is expected to consider all these things. I think if section 19 is properly implemented, out of all sections in the entire enactment, in my humble opinion, if section 19 is implemented in true spirit, no domestic violence will take place. Not even the family court will be loaded with cases of divorce. Not even the Mahila court could be loaded with the 304B and the 306. The magistrate has got so many sensible duties and responsibilities under the Act. The law contemplates many of the futuristic events and provides for direction. Wherever important directions are to be given, I have given it in complete bold letters. Restraining the respondent from dispossessing or in any other manner disturbing the possession of the aggrieved person from the shared household. From the shared household, the aggrieved woman shall not be dispossessed. The second thing is important, directing the respondent to remove himself from the shared household. This is not automatic or absolute. Directing the respondent to remove himself from the shared household. If even after the orders being passed for dispossession, if the respondent is committing continued domestic violence, and if he is not obeying the orders of the court, then the court may order the respondent to remove himself, not otherwise. The law also says this provision should be very sparingly used and very carefully used. Just like that, it cannot be used. Restraining the respondent from relatives from entering into portion of the shared household, from alienation, etc., etc. These are all the situations. Depending upon the context and situation, court is expected to pass orders. See this clause. The magistrate may impose any additional conditions or pass any other direction which he may deem reasonably necessary to protect or to provide for the safety of the aggrieved person or any child of the aggrieved person. The magistrate may impose any additional condition, pass any other direction which they deem reasonably necessary. They deem reasonably necessary. It is not that I'm coming and asking them. It is not necessary that I should come and ask. These things are essential. You are hearing my application on stop violence, and if you feel that for in my interest, in my safety, in the safety of my children, it is necessary, the court is expected to find out and give me what is reasonably necessary. That is the beauty of the provision under the residence orders. The magistrate may require from the respondent to execute a bond for obeying that. Then the continuation is, while passing an order under subsection 1 of section 2 of subsection 3, the court may also pass an order directing officer in charge of the nearest police station to give protection to the aggrieved person or to assist her and making the application in the implementation of the order. You cannot be happy with passing the order, which is deemed necessary in your opinion, and the magistrates are also expected to communicate the order, directing the officer in charge of the police station to assist for the protection. See the next one in class 7. The magistrate may direct the officer in charge of the police station in whose jurisdiction the magistrate has been approached to assist in the implementation of the protection order. Protection order, you should have said you don't go to the employment place, but still the other side goes. It is for the officer to ensure that this order is obeyed. The magistrate may also direct the respondent to return to the possession of the aggrieved person her sthidana or any other property or valuable security to which she is entitled to. See this provision. This provision, nobody would have better understood this provision than me because of my experience as a judge in the Mahila court. Now, invariably, wherever 304B comes, statement under section 164 would have been recorded. The father and mother would have said too many things about the misconduct of the other side. But at the time of trial, either under section 304B or 306, they will come and simply say that they do not know, they were away from the home of the daughter and they do not know what happened, why it happened. They do not know anything about that. Simply say, well, this. Many a times I have asked them what happened to make a switch over to the earlier statement and why they are doing this. They used to say, we got return of all these sthidana articles. If this provision is implemented, as soon as the domestic violence starts, and if the aggrieved person is able to spend some of her sthidana properties, at least for her necessities, and if sthidana properties are returned, many problems would not arise at all. For the purpose of sthidana property is the separate property of a married woman. And only for the purpose of getting sthidana properties returned, the father and mother of this woman who died become hostile. And the entire judicial process becomes a waste. Waste of police time, waste of judicial time, everything is a waste. Only for the purpose of getting sthidana. Maybe the other purpose is to getting custody of the child. They are concerned more with the custody of the child. In order to have custody, they will simply say the other side is blameless and they were keeping the daughter in a very good position and therefore there is no necessity at all to give any punishment. To that extent they will go. And if this law legislature has taken sensibly of maybe this kind of happenings, and therefore the power is given to the magistrate to direct the respondent to return to the possession of the aggrieved person her sthidana or other properties or valuable security to which she is entitled to. Those things we do not know, whether any other property she will be entitled to, any other valuable security we do not know, but we are quite sure that sthidana properties, if that is returned, the aggrieved woman may not have any problem. Then it is monetary relief that includes loss of earnings, medical expenses, etc., etc. That includes maintenance also. Maintenance, yes, there is already a provision under section 125 CRPC, but even if there is provisions of 125 CRPC is there, this law is in addition to, not in derogation of any other law. Maybe the order passed under section 125 will be taken into account while passing an order of maintenance under this enactment. But just because there is an order under 125, there cannot be a problem to claim maintenance. Then the monetary relief. While granting monetary relief, the magistrate can also order appropriate lump sum payment or monthly payment as the nature and circumstances require. The magistrate shall send a copy of the order for monetary relief to the person in charge of the police station within the local limits of whose jurisdiction the respondent resides. See, the other provision that is very, very important. The magistrate may direct the last one. The magistrate may direct the employer or the debtor of the respondent to directly pay to the aggrieved person or to deposit with the court a portion of the wages or the salary or debt due to or accrued to the credit of the respondent, which amount may be adjusted towards the monetary relief payable by the respondent. If this provision is followed, the woman need not go to the court asking them to execute the order, or the protection officer need not go and ask the court to execute the order. It is not for the court to always issuing bailable warrant, non-bailable warrant, distress warrant, so many warrant, and just to feel that as if the court is helpless. There are very beautiful provisions like this, and at least in cases of the persons who are employed respondents, this kind of provisions can be very well used to ensure that this can be done. See, once again, they see how the elastic the provision is and how beautiful the provision is. In any proceeding before him under this act, in any proceeding before him under this act, the magistrate may pass such interim orders as he deems just and proper. It does not say that whatever is asked for you give. It does not say that whatever is asked for, it is not for you to grant. It says, whatever is deemed just and proper, you pass such interim order. And I don't think beyond these magistrate, nobody else is powerful in the world after reading these provisions. Only thing is, as I said already, whether there had been a domestic violence or there is a likelihood of domestic violence. That's all. Then the power is limitless. Then we have seen in motor accident cases also copies should be given free of cost, but see the sensible provisions, the magistrate is expected to give free copy not only to the parties but also to the police officer for the purpose of giving protection or implementation of the order, and also to the service providers and the protection officers. All of them are entitled to free copies. I do not know whether it is being given or not. Then any relief available under section 18, 19, 20, 22 is in addition to the existing provisions. Therefore, if any other legal proceedings are pending before civil court, family court or criminal court, the aggrieved persons can all seek this remedy in a case where the other courts are dealing with. Not necessary that you should go to the concerned magistrate only. If the aggrieved woman has a civil case pending before a civil court, yes, the civil court can consider. If it is in the family court, yes, family court, criminal court, criminal court. My God, there are provisions which are very much giving access to justice. Wherever the proceedings are already pending, the aggrieved woman need not multiply the proceedings, and in the existing court where the case is pending, they can go and ask for it. This is when the act is a combination of civil and criminal remedies. As I said earlier, mainly the predominant remedies are civil in nature. They can ask for protection officer, monetary relief, etc., residence order, etc. But if the order is not complied with, and if the aggrieved woman has the grievance that the violation has been committed by the accused, and a complaint is taken under section 31, the court is expected not to ask for witnesses after witnesses. Upon the sole, only for this purpose this slide is put, upon the sole testimony of the aggrieved person, the court may conclude that offense under subsection 1 of section 31, that is breach of orders that is passed. If there is a breach, only then the criminal law steps in. Till such time, criminal law do not step in at all. All remedies are purely civil. The law has a purpose behind it. If anybody goes to the police station, then the family life is likely to broken into pieces and there may not be reunion, not possible. Therefore, it provides for the civil remedy, immediate requirement. What is your immediate requirement? Yes, we will give you protection. And if the orders are not obeyed, only then the provisions become criminal, a remedy become criminal, and they can prefer a complaint for violation of the order. Complaint is under section 31. When a complaint is given, it is not for the court to ask for too many witnesses to say that this order is not obeyed. You call the employer and say that employer has not deducted the salary, not that such kind of roving inquiry. It is enough if the sole testimony of the aggrieved person is enough, it is for the court to act upon that. We are, yes sir, what is the time available, sir?
So I've got some more time, ma'am. No issues, ma'am. You can take some more time. Now, it's only 12:50.
I didn't notice the time, but this is a very, very sensible poem. I had been to National Judicial Academy, Bhopal, sometime in January. The whole day had been dedicated for the purpose of discussion regarding how do we evaluate the evidence of a child witness. It is a whole day. We are expected to chair the session only that. But I was just wondering whether the whole day would be required to understand how to evaluate the evidence of a child witness. After hearing some of the resource persons from Bangalore, I felt one day is not sufficient. That is how they have been dealing with the topic. It is a poem that is published in Australian Law Journal. It describes how bad a young girl would feel if the system is not going to deliver justice. As I said earlier, the justice is not only to the woman who is in intimate partner relationship with the husband, but also to elderly women, sisters, widows, and small children who are in the home. And the child sexual abuse of late is very rampant, and the abuse is only by the persons who had close association with the child. When the law provides for, like this Domestic Violence Act, POCSO also provides for very, very laudable provisions. But when the implementation point comes, everything becomes a failure. How this young girl feels who is suffering a domestic violence inside the home. I opened up the presentation stating a case of sexual abuse, child sexual abuse by the father. Similar is the case here. This poem also speaks of the mind of a young girl who is sexually abused by the father and the mind of the mother, whether to take sides with the young girl or with her own husband, namely the father of the child. What happens when social workers comes in? You see, very, very painful. I will not say it's a beautiful poem. I will say it's a very painful poem. And if this poem is remembered by each and every one of us, and I think it will be, we'll be putting a full stop to the domestic violence that is happening in anybody's house. I'll read it. It is in the language of the young girl. I asked you for help and you told me you would. If I told you the things my dad did to me. Dad is guilty of this sexual abuse, and the social worker says, if you tell me what is done to you by your father, I will help you. I asked you for help and you told me you would if I told you the things my dad did to me. You asked me to trust you and you made me repeat them to 14 different strangers. I asked you for privacy. You sent 2 policemen to my school like I was the one who was being busted. I asked you for help and you gave me a doctor with cold hands who spread my legs and stabbed me just like my father. See, I asked you for help and you gave me a doctor with cold hands who spread my legs and stabbed me just like my father. There is no difference between the culprit and the... That is how I was handled. I asked you for confidentiality. You let the newspaper get my story. I asked you for protection and you gave me a social worker. Do you know what it is like to have more social workers than friends? I asked you for help and you forced my mom to choose between us, that is, between this girl and the father. She chose him, of course. She chose him, of course. See the kind of violence. It is a violence to choose. She's bound to choose. She was scared and she had a lot to lose. I had a lot to lose too. The difference is you never told me how much. The implied line is how much I had to lose. I asked you to put an end to my abuse. You put an end to my whole life. You took away nights of hell and gave me days of hell. Hell is over in the night, but it is in the day. You have changed my private nightmare for a very public one. You have changed my private nightmare for a very public one. If this is the feeling of an young girl, if this is the impression that we give to the mind of a young girl, if we are not going to address domestic violence that is happening inside the home, if the young girl entertains this kind of feeling about the family, about the society, about the whole world, what kind of future she can give it to us in future? What kind of generation she'll be creating in future? What is the brooding sense of injustice in the mind of a young girl? If we are not able to vanish, if we are not able to wipe out the tear of a young girl, what for we are living in this society? You please, every one of you, think it over. I was really moved greatly by after when this poem was read out in National Judicial Academy. I searched for it and got it from the internet. And in almost all my presentations, I will not be satisfied if I am not sharing this poem. And then this is the lyrics written by lyricist Vivek. Kannal urasugirar, balam kondu nasukugirar, வலிமை வரம் எனவே மீசையை ஏற்றுகிறார். ஆண்மை அது மீசை முடி ஓரத்திலே பூப்பதில்லை, பெண்ணை நீ கண்ணியமாய் பார்ப்பதிலே அது தொழிற்கும். See, the picture is self-talking. I need not say, no picture could better explain the domestic violence being suffered in the home. And it is our duty and responsibility to ensure that domestic violence should be stopped at any cost. I think this is the end of it. And if there are any questions, we will discuss.
Yes, Milord, there are questions by participants.
Yes, sir.
They have raised in the options.
Sir?
The options that are raised the hands. Let me stop the screen, Milord, before going to the section.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Screen can be closed, sir.
Yes, yes.
There is no more.
Yes, Milord. May I go to the questions now? I may request Mr. M.S. Parthiban to ask the questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for such a wonderful lecture, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, can the aggrieved wife ask for protection in case of anticipated violence, ma'am?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
The beauty of the provision is prevention. Supposing I have reasonable grounds to suspect that this is going to happen. Supposing, take an example that a property is going to be purchased in the house. It is going to be in the name of the husband. The wife feels that she has also contributed financially, being an employee, earning monthly income, and she also demands that a property should be bought in her name. And on account of that, there is a heavy dispute in the family, and she is anticipating violence to be perpetrated upon her. She can very well go and say that this is the circumstance under which I am expecting a violence which is likely to take place. I need protection. I'm just giving you an example. For the anticipated violence also, they can go and ask for protection orders.
All right.
I think I have made myself clear, sir.
Parthiban?
Yes, my lord.
Is it clear, sir?
Yes, yes.
Hello, another question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord. One other question, my lord. One other question.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Whether this domestic incident report they used to make, my lord, DIR, is it mandatory for the magistrate to grant the interim protection?
Even in my presentation, I have been telling, if it is for them to consider, because the language used is shall. Shall means if it is available, yes, it is magistrate to wait for the domestic incident report. Waiting for domestic incident report will cause more injustice to the aggrieved person than doing justice. Let them not wait. They are not expected to wait for the domestic incidents report. They can call for if they want after passing interim orders, not before that.
All right. My lord, one other question, my lord. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
How this DV is differed from 498 in case of physical abuses, my lord?
498A, as I said, it is in criminal provision under the criminal law. Therefore, once we go to the criminal forum, then they feel that their breakage is certain. But when they are complaining of domestic violence before the court and asking for what is needed for the lady is asked for in the civil forum, and what is the punishment to be meted out to the opposite side, that is if I want to protect myself, everybody may feel happy about that. But if I want to not we want to have a chance of union.
All right, my lord.
Else, sir?
Thank you, my lord. Thank you so much.
May I request Miss Rudra Devi to ask the questions. Rudra Devi?
Yes. Good morning, my lordship.
Good morning.
Yeah, you gave a wonderful lecture regarding this. And I accept 100% that you have said already in the beginning, very beginning, that the law written, only have a written statement as equal rights for women and men. There is no actual equal rights for women. And let me pose my first question. It is audible now?
Yes, yes, audible.
When there is several enactment for then why particularly we need this Domestic Violence Act, and how does it differ from other acts?
So far, before the enactment of Protection of Rights for Women, there is no law at all which recognizes violence inside the family. Violence, whenever we mean violence, when there is a shooting or a kind of public clash leading to bloodshed and all, we believe, yes, it is violence. But when somebody is using verbal language which make us sleepless, it is not recognized as violence at all. And therefore, there is no law at all which recognizes what is happening inside the family at all. There was no law as it is. Therefore, recognizing those kind of violence, in fact, I may say that the 50% of the women in India is 50% women are there in the entire population. And if assuming that there is violence in each and every family, how there is going to be a national development? See, at time in the olden days, there was an announcement that whenever there is a war, there is an announcement that women and children should go inside and put a protected place. Thereafter, war will commence. Now that the flight in the war front is being operated by a lady, women, to that extent, women can achieve. If by putting verbal violence and other kind of violence, if you are going to make her sit inside the home, how there is going to be a national development? Rightly, the legislature has recognized this kind of violences as abuses, and it wants to stop it, only that. Stop violence. That's it.
Thank you. Shall I put my second question?
Yes, yes.
As you explained under the section 19 of residence orders,
Yes.
in that, can an aggrieved wife can hold the house of mother-in-law, which belongs to her mother-in-law, whether the protection can be sought by them?
No, that cannot be. That cannot be. Only in a cases where the husband has a right in it, you can ask for the protection order. But the case, I think, by the Supreme Court, Honorable Justice Markandeya Kaju explained this saying. In the UK, we have the British Matrimonial Homes Act. Just like that, we don't have such provisions. When a property belongs to the mother-in-law exclusively, not a joint family property belonging to the husband and mother-in-law, it is an exclusive property belonging to mother-in-law, you can't ask for such a protection. Because you can't make the other lady into the street by asking for protection. That is what the Supreme Court said.
Okay. I have one other question.
Yes, yes.
Though, as you explained, the law is a only tool to access for the justice. And what is special about the access of justice under this particular domestic violence?
See, access is one thing. Affordability is also another thing. Supposing I have a problem today, I need not wait for the money for payment of court fees. There is a prescribed format for making an application under Section 12 that is available very well. I can download the application. In dotted lines, I can just fill it up. Name, what happened, why happened, which date, that's all. Not that strict rules of pleading should be complied with. Not that I should say each and everything. Supposing whatever I know, just when I can fill up the form and go to a magistrate and present it, say I am suffering from domestic violence, protect me. See the kind of, if I am not able to, anybody can file the application on behalf of me. Supposing as nobody is available, friends, relatives are not forthcoming, then mandatorily protection officer is duty bound to assist me in arriving at the court premises or to file a complaint even. Till implementation stage, it is those persons are there. What a women require immediately. Not that every woman wants a husband to be put inside the prison. What they want, supposing they have suffered a fracture, they want medical facility. Yes. I want to know what are my rights, what are the remedies. Yes, legal services authority is there. I want a shelter home. Yes, there is a shelter home. These are all the immediate instant requirements for a woman to protect herself. This protection is available in manifold directions, manifold persons, several persons parallelly available, parallel legal remedy. If you want to go to 498, yes, you can go. If you do not want 498, you go to the civil court, yes, you can go. What if you don't want the perpetrator to come into your way? Yes, no. What is practically needed, that is addressed. You might have heard from the presentation itself that access is unlimited in this enactment.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Rudra, for the time. Ma'am, I think Justice Vaidyanathan wants to offer his comments, ma'am. Esvin, sir. Esvin, sir.
Waiting to hear my brother, Justice.
Let me unmute him. I have requested to unmute his mic, Milord. In the meantime, some questions have come.
Yes, sir.
Can a wife who has suffered an order of judicial separation can still invoke the provisions of the DV Act? Is the question.
Definitely, sir. The question is a lady who has not obtained a divorce but only judicial separation.
Judicial separation.
When they ask for a divorce, there is a severance of status as wife. Even when it is a case of only judicial separation, till the status as wife subsists. For the domestic violence which had happened or which is happening or which is likely to happen, all the three kinds of violences are taken care of. And therefore, the wife who has suffered an order of judicial separation is also entitled to invoke the provisions of the Domestic Violence Act.
So until and unless the marriage is dissolved, she has got a right to it.
Yes, she has every right to ask for it.
Yes, ma'am. Next question, Milord, can the relief under the Domestic Violence Act be sought when proceedings are pending before some other forums or similar reliefs? It is not that invoking act for the first time. Already something has been asked in some other forum. Can she invoke the act once again when the matter is pending before some other forum?
Either she can approach the same forum where the case is already pending, or she can approach this forum also, because the provisions are in addition to and not in derogation.
Derogation to. So they have simultaneous jurisdiction.
Yes, a simultaneous remedy is provided.
And our next question is, what is the duration of the order passed by the magistrate in the DVA?
It is till the women who got the order want a discharge of that order, or when the other side respondent comes and explain to the court that there is change in circumstances, therefore this kind of orders are not necessary, and therefore there is a modification is needed, or variation is needed, or abrogation is needed, whatever is needed, either at the instance of the aggrieved woman herself or at the instance of the respondent, and that position is admitted by the aggrieved person and satisfactorily explained to the court that such orders are not necessary till such time the order exists.
Yes, Milord. Thank you, Milord. May I now move to Ms. Lakshmi, who wants to pose a question. Ms.
Yes, sir.
Lakshmi?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. It was a very wonderful session, very informative. I have a few questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any time limitation, like from the time of the offense, is there any time duration for filing the petition? Like
No,
an,
no, it is, as I said originally, it is a kind of civil remedy. 468 CRPC provides limitation for filing cases only in respect of offences. The
Okay.
criminal remedy is only a civil remedy. Only if the order is not violated, then the question of initiating proceeding under Section 31 arises. And moreover, many things are, say for maintenance, it is a continuing obligations.
Mhm.
Of limitation may not arise.
Okay, and also, how do I give evidence of, say, mental abuse and economic abuse and infidelity and all that?
See, it is exclusively a matter within your personal knowledge.
Okay.
Maybe in a case of infertility, coupled with evidence of the doctor.
Sorry, ma'am, infidelity.
Infidelity, okay, sorry. Infidelity, you are alleging a husband.
Yes.
The one phrase used in